Hey, it's Wednesday night, and we've actually got a special episode of Graphic Policy Radio. Normally airing on Mondays, we've had to switch it around this week due to various reasons. We should be having a guest join us tonight. We're just waiting for her to call in. We'll kind of describe it after I introduce my co-host. Alana, how you doing?
Great. So Monday was the big May Day action, which is why I at least wasn't able to do the podcast then. We had folks coming all over the country, workers on strike. But today I've spent the evening making posters because Donald Trump is coming to New York City on Star Wars Day. Now, of all of the days for Donald Trump to come to New York City, Star Wars Day is a particularly interesting choice for us because he represents the empire, and New York, of course, is one of the home bases of the resistance. Star Wars Day is May the 4th because it sounds like May the Force be with you, May the Force be with you. I'm not making this up. This is on the internet. Yep. You can look it up. So I've been really trying to use some Star Wars storytelling and themes in our own activism around it. I just made a couple signs that said resistance is built on hope. If you guys will recall the quote from Princess Leia. I did a little Leia head and a Rebel Forces logo for the O, for the various O's in it. Hello.
Hey, Kristen.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll introduce you in a second. So,
sorry.
Thanks for calling in. All good.
I would just say that folks who are in New York come out to DeWitt Clinton Park tomorrow between 2 and 5 p.m. There will be a wonderful festival of resistance against Donald Trump, and I am bringing some inflatable lightsabers. Like, there'll be lots of Star Wars things happening because the rebellion is going to stand against the evil empire once more. So I hope to see you guys there.
Pretty awesome.
I encourage other folks to use Star Wars. People should just use Star Wars in their activism more broadly. You know, we had a particular podcast episode about this back in the winter. Folks can go check it out with me and some folks from the U.S. Rebel Alliance talking about Star Wars as a tool of resistance. So check it out.
Yes, it's a great mix of geekdom and activism. So should be a lot of fun to see what you post up online on Twitter. So we've got a guest tonight. She's the creator of a really fun series called Henchgirl that has recently been released as a trade by Dark Horse. So Mary Posa hates her job, and she works long hours for little pay, no insurance, and worst of all, no respect. So, yeah, it sounds like a lot of us. Her coworkers are jerks. Her boss doesn't appreciate her. Also sounds like a lot of us. He's also a supervillain. Not a lot of our bosses. And her parents, well, they're mostly famous superheroes. It's Henchgirl. It's a really cute, fun series that I've been a fan of for quite some time. Alana's been a fan. And we have the creator, Kristen Gudsnuk. Hopefully I pronounced that last name right. Sorry if I butchered it. And she's joining us tonight to discuss it. She's the creator of Henchgirl, which is, as I said, recently published by Dark Horse. She's also the illustrator for a children's series VIP, which you should go check out. So welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And, yeah, it's Gudsnuk. You got it right.
Sweet. I have a really, really bad habit of butchering people's last names, so I'm usually very nervous about doing so. So that's my thing. Let's go with that.
Okay, cool.
So the thing that I always like to start off with asking people about they're creating is like, how did you actually get into creating comics and, go from just like maybe a fan and an illustrator to actually creating them?
Well, actually, ever since I was little, I was always writing stories and doodling pictures that corresponded with them. And so I would just draw comics all the time as like a kid and as a teenager, like to entertain my friends at school. Like a lot of times it would be just jokes about our schoolwork and our teachers, but then sometimes I would make little narratives and stuff. So I'd always been kind of, I'd always read comics, but I'd always also been doodling them all the time. So for me it was just a question of taking it a little more seriously, And like, so I had done a couple of webcomics when I was younger, and then when I started doing Henchgirl, I realized that the story was kind of big, and that it was something I was really enthusiastic about. So that's how it kind of like turned into like a whole big thing instead of just like a fun doodle comic.
Where did the actual concept of Henchgirl come from? Like, what was the genesis of the world and the characters? And because it's a great spoof, somewhat of other superhero comics.
Yeah, well, I had been watching a lot of the Bruce Timm universe, like cartoons, like Batman animated series, and like Justice League, and Superman and all that, and I was really enjoying it. And at the same time, I was noticing, it was really bringing like superhero tropes like to the forefront in my brain, and I was just thinking about where I would be if I were in a superhero world. And I decided that I would be like the random background person who's like holding the bag of money, because I don't know, I thought it'd be interesting to see like a superhero story from like a really unexceptional person's perspective. But also I didn't like my old job, and so it was a fun way to metaphorically vent about it. Because I think that's the main thing is that it's like, what?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the main thing for me is that it was more about professional angst being like, metaphorically turned into a fun story.
One of the things that I always observe and tell folks is, no matter where you work, no matter what you do, it's pretty safe to say that management sucks. And, the story that you're telling is so relatable to folks. And, it's a humor comic, but it's very emotionally real underneath it all.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you.
I don't want to give away the ending of the first volume, but I was incredibly emotionally touched at the end of it. And, it's also a comedy. Brett has been an early fan of the comic and tried to get me into it, and I finally picked it up from you actually at New York Comic Con, and so now there's this new edition that's out by Dark Horse, and has the comic sort of changed as you've written it in terms of the complexity and the themes, or the any of the way the art has been approached? Because you're a one-person shop on this, really.
Yeah, well, being a one-person shop means that, like, yeah, of course, the writing and the art, everything really changed and evolved over the course of doing it, because, like I said, I was just drawing it, like, kind of for fun at first. So I really took my time making Henchgirl. I did it over the course of a couple of years. And the interesting thing about that is that it's kind of like a condensation of all my various ideas over the course of like 3 years. So it's like packed to the gills with a lot of different things and themes and just like weird jokes and stuff. So I think that that's like the method in which I made it is really evident when you like sit back and look at it. But yeah, no, in the beginning, I think just as I grew as a person alongside Mary, just the kind of questions that were intriguing me also shifted. And also because you don't want to just keep hammering home the same points over and over again.
How many years have you been working on Henchgirl?
I did it in about 3 years. So I started in 2013 and I finished it last year.
How did the series evolve over all those years? I mean, yeah, and it's a long time to work on any comic. But like, what were some of the things that changed over time?
Well, later on in the comic, it's not as much about being a henchgirl, and it's more just about her trying to find her place in the world beyond that too. So in that way, I think it changes. But also, like, originally the art was like it was crappy black and white art that like it was very, I redrew the first like 80 pages or so, because at New York Comic Con once, I think it was 2 years ago, this guy I know looked at my book and was like, wow, is this the first thing you ever drew in your life?
Oh my
and
God.
I was like, oh God. No.
Oof.
I appreciate that kind of harshness, because first of all, he said it in a comedic way and we all laughed, but also because when people are being honest with you, it's how you like actually improve. And I'm glad I redrew the first bunch of pages, because I think it's more welcoming now that like I kind of, because I'm self-taught as an artist, so I learned by doing. But you could see too much learning happening in the beginning part that I ended up redrawing.
Is for like, when was that released? Because it's interesting. Like I picked up the first issue when it was out with Scout, so I'm wondering if that was post things changed or pre things changed. And I haven't really thought about going back and looking at those issues compared to what was released with Dark Horse.
Anything you got from Scout is the redrawn stuff.
Okay.
I just mean before Scout. I also self-published for a while. Yeah. So when I was doing that, like there are these really old, like I printed them at Kablam. I have these old Kablam comics of my issue 1. It's completely different. It's kind of funny to see and compare, but no one will see those anymore because it's not in any of the official versions.
I'm amazed that you're self-taught. Were there particular like pieces of comic art that you really spent time dissecting and learning from? Because your storytelling is really, really, really easy to follow.
Oh, thank you. Well, I took a comics. Oh, I forgot to say this. This is really weird and funny. So I did a drink and draw once, very, very long time ago, and I won this award, and the award was to do a comics class. And I was like, oh, I should make a comic. And that's part of why I made Henchgirl, so that I could use this voucher.
Wow.
Well, that's part of what
so
motivated
cool.
me, is I was like, I got to make a comic because I've got to do this comics class. But I thought it was going to be like a 5-page gag thing, and then it just kept expanding onwards from there. Because I was just going to make fun of like superhero names and then be done with it. And then I was like, no, there's characters here. But yeah, so I took this comics class, and the teacher there, it's at the Art Students League of New York. It's actually pretty cheap for a, an art class. And he taught us a bunch of stuff. And one of the things was just, try to make things look cool. But if it looking cool is like interfering with how easy it is to read, then tone it down. So I took that to heart, that lesson in particular. But also the artist who did She-Hulk, I forget what his name is, but he did the art for this. No, it's the newish one. He's like the Spanish artist.
Oh,
anyways, he's got this really cool art style. Javier Pulido.
Pulido, yeah.
I really looked a lot at his art, actually, because I liked how simple it was and yet really sophisticated in terms of visual storytelling.
I always enjoy seeing like different ways you portray the character visually in different situations. Like you'll do like a panel that's like way more anime when like people are making eyes at each other, and you have like more noir movie poster style covers at times. Like you definitely play with style within the art as well.
Yeah, well, part of that's just, I mean, you don't have to stick to a certain style. And if you can get more of like what you're trying to express from switching styles, I think sometimes it looks really cool. Like I don't know. So I tend to just try to just do whatever I want to do in terms of like how I want the character to look on that part. Except you have to make sure that like people can tell who the character is. So in some ways you have to stick to some level of consistency, but I struggle with that sometimes, but whatever.
No, it's always very clear who all the characters are. I mean, in terms of personality and their look and stuff like that. You know, you don't draw everybody in the same outfit all the time either. Like, you have normal people who change their clothes, but it's very clear who everyone is. I also was particularly struck by, you know, there's so many good jokes, and I just don't want to give them away. But I think humor is a hard thing to do, and it seems like it comes really naturally to your story.
Oh, thanks.
Like, how do you
Actually,
test it? Like, how do you know that something's funny? Like, before you draw it? I mean, can you even know?
oh, I have no idea. I mean, for me, it's just, it's very, like, reflexive to make a joke, because part of it is, like, I don't know, part of it might be, like, an ironic thing where you're, like, it's not too serious. Here's a joke. Don't worry. Like, when I make things more dramatic, I usually undercut it with some sort of joke. I don't know why. It's just how I do things. But it's just like, I think it's part of my writing DNA. I can't take things too seriously because I always see the absurdity in life.
Well, I'm glad that the story didn't begin and end with, like, making jokes about superhero names, because that's like so done. And your story has so many other things happening with the jokes too. It's hard for me, like, it's hard not to spoil things, but just the moment where she's mistaken for someone else. I think anybody who's read the comic will know what I mean. I lost it. That was amazing. And where her roommate's power becomes evident. I mean, I just dropped the comic and tried to explain everything to my husband right then. I was like,
yeah, well, I mean, both of those jokes, like, the humor comes from the way you expect the world to be, like, versus reality, like the expectations, reality, kind of that meme in a way. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I think that's where a lot of my humor comes from, is just pointing out how much worse reality is than what we're hoping or expecting it to be. But, like, comedic effect, I don't know.
When you go to create I was going to say, when you create the series, do you work it with the script and then do the art, or are you kind of just on the fly?
Oh, I definitely write the script and then edit it like 1,000 times beforehand, because my main thing is I don't like doing things twice. I'm not like, I just like getting stuff done fast. So my worst nightmare is to have to redraw a part because I changed the writing. So I try to get all the editing done beforehand. And I'll still change the art constantly, but usually it's just because I'm like, oh, her arm is too long. Not like a writing change. But yeah, no, you can't control what's happening if you're writing it as it goes, you know? At least I can't.
Do you have a way, like, do you have a way of, like, testing stuff with folks to see if it's funny before you actually do the art for it, though?
No.
Like, I mean, like, you don't have an editor.
I just kind of roll with it. Well, I didn't have, well, I mean, I have an editor now at Dark Horse, but when I brought her, Henchgirl was all done. So, no, I mean, if it entertained me, I assumed it was funny enough. And I think my method is to put as many jokes as possible in so that at least some of them will land. Like, in terms of, like, just, like, sign gags and all sorts of stuff. But, no, it was all...
Yeah.
What?
Go ahead. Well, I found myself being very emotionally invested in the character very quickly. And I think I don't think this is a spoiler, so I'll just say it. I think one of the things that makes the story, like, really relatable, and and yet specific enough to be interesting is when she's coming off of, in the first issue, when she's coming off of work from the initial heist, and she gets, she finally is home and somewhat delirious, and she's like, why do they make me wear a girdle? None of the other henchwomen have to wear a girdle. And like that moment of being like, not only, is she being brutalized by work, but she's like being subject to like really sexist working conditions, that are like making it even harder for her, like that added burden for her to be a woman in that situation. It's a good choice.
Part of that is like a meta joke about superhero and villain costuming being like overly sexualized and ridiculous. But another thing is just, I guess, I drew her as a more like full-figured character. She's like, I don't know. I mean, she's a fictional character, so you don't know if she's plus size, but I guess we'll say she is. But so another thing was just like, how does like a person who's not like skinny like exist in like our world is one that like really glorifies like dieting and being thin. So I just kind of wanted to point out that hypocrisy and stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah,
absolutely.
I think that's.
But it definitely feels like, like a lot of women, like, you have to wear heels to work. Why do you have to wear heels to work? Because some guy said so. You have to dress and present yourself a certain way.
That.
It makes it even harder for you to do your job. Like, it's even harder to be a henchgirl wearing a girdle.
If you notice, I hate heels so much that none of my characters ever wear heels. They'll wear, like, it'll have, like, an inch heel, and it'll be, like, flat. But I don't know. I just think that they're, like, evil. Although I guess a lot of people wear heels, so I probably should learn how to draw them.
Did you have the whole cast in mind when you began writing the story, or did, like, characters, like did you know that her parents were going to be revealed to be who they are from the beginning, or did that kind of develop over time?
I thought of that after. I didn't have that in issue 1, but I think I thought of it in issue 3, because there's a part where she's like, there's an alien invasion is happening in the city, and everyone else's parents are calling them to make sure they're all right, and she's like, my parents haven't called me to see if I'm okay, and she's like, she pretends to get a phone call from her parents so that her roommates won't think that like her parents don't love her. And then I was thinking about it, and I was like, oh, why didn't they call her? And I figured that it would make sense both thematically and also just be interesting for her to have superhero parents. And so then I really set up the whole next issue all about that.
That's fabulous. I mean, that scene with her calling herself, it's both so funny and painful. Like, it's so funny and painful. I think that's true for a lot of things. I'm also really over. I mean, I'm also like really invested in like the romantic outcome of her relationship with Mannequin, as well as her two roommates' relationship with each other. And like, I mean, I need to know, like, are we gonna get to see more of this story in a future edition?
There's no plans for a continuing volume yet.
No.
Because I wanted to take a break from it. But I did leave it in such a way that I could easily pick it back up if I wanted to, and if I like had a script ready and everything. Because I think that I wanted to end it in such a way that I left it still, the characters were still interesting. I don't know, just because I always, okay, so like you read the end of Harry Potter, it's not, there was like this little epilogue. Do you know what I'm talking about? At the end of Harry Potter.
I actually do, and I've never read Harry Potter.
But I know what you're talking about, even though I've never read Harry Potter, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm not spoiling anything. It's just there's a part where they're old and they're just boring, and that's how it ends in a way. And I just like the idea of ending things without I like having whatever it was that was fun and interesting about the story. I like the promise of that continuing for the characters. So that's kind of why I framed it the way I did. But also so I can come back in if I wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I was there. You have a reveal in that end piece about a character who I think we thought was a certain way, and maybe it was another, and a different character who maybe we thought was good and is seeming to have to be troubled.
Oh.
So there's a lot of intrigue, but I also just I really need to know how people's relationships came together. I got misty-eyed on something. It's hard because I don't want to give away things. I know that a lot of listeners might never read the comic yet, but it was really moving. The relationships with the characters. Are
you talking about Sue and Tina, or Mary and Fred?
I definitely care about that. I mean, yeah, both of them. I really do care about both of those relationships.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Do you need your fans to ask you to produce a second volume? Is that?
Well, a lot of people have asked already. I just would need to sit down and write it and figure it all out. And right now I'm knees deep in my next book. So right now that's all I'm writing and thinking about.
Ooh,
currently.
Tell us about your next book.
It's really exciting. I don't think that we haven't released the title yet, but it's coming out from Graphics, Scholastic, their graphic novel imprint. Yeah, it's really neat. I am in the middle of inking page 95, so sometime next year I have this. It's kind of I've been saying it's like Sailor Moon meets Freaks and Geeks, and it's for middle grade kids. So it's going to be fun. And I wrote it and I'm drawing it.
That's cool.
With Scholastic, we can assume that it's for kids, the primary audience.
Yeah, but also I hope that my readers of Henchgirl will check it out, because it's the same. It's same level of writing or whatever. I just didn't have anything inappropriate happen, but I don't know.
I have to ask, what with carrots? Where did that come from?
See,
and out of everything, why carrots?
Interesting question. Yeah. Well, so I had a nightmare once that there were these worms in my skin, and one was coming out of my wrist from a pore, and it looked really gross. And I just lodged that strange image away. And then when I was trying to come up with a power for Tina to have, I thought of that, but then I was that's too disgusting. Let's make this in some way where it could have a positive use, hey, she can make food, infinite amounts of food. And, so I was trying to make that horrible, weird dream I had more palatable. But it was also just kind of random, because I like the idea of someone getting superpowers that are crappy and you don't really know what to do with them, because in a way that's kind of life in a way, where you're just I don't know what to do with these weird things that I'm good at. I can draw a picture. How is that going to help me? So.
That's interesting. Yeah, that moment though, I just literally cracked up so hard. And you did something with it.
I was hoping it would be
plot form. It's a real plot point,
Yeah, I like just creeping people out and having just weird body horror humor. It's just something I find very entertaining myself.
I really love that you're writing a kid's graphic novel now. I think, and the way you described it, it sounds like something a lot of kids will benefit from and enjoy.
Yeah, I had like a PDF of it on my phone of like the first part or whatever, because sometimes when I'm bored, I'll just read through it and double check for mistakes. And I let my little cousin look at it, and she's like 20 now, and she was like, I wish I had this when I was in middle school. So hopefully other kids will feel likewise.
Yeah, it's not really.
When's that series supposed to come out?
It's going to be a graphic novel, but it's sometime next year. I don't know the date. Sometime in 2018, I think.
Okay.
Summer. I'm not sure. I'd have to check my email. And then also it's all contingent upon me finishing it.
if for like writing, because Henchgirl is more for an older audience. Definitely is not something I would give to like young kids. I just don't think they would probably get a lot of the jokes, but not that there's anything like horrible in it or anything like that.
Yeah.
But writing for a younger audience, is it different as a writer and creating comics with that? Like, and then to the second part of that is there's a lot of kind of shift in like maybe the last decade or two of doing things for younger kids and then having what feel like very inappropriate jokes that young kids are definitely not going to get, but adults would get. So, is that something you're thinking about doing as well, or is this like strictly for kids and then adults could enjoy it as well?
Well, so first of all, I did think about it when I was starting writing it. I was trying to figure out the level of appropriateness and stuff. But I decided that I shouldn't worry about that, because if you're censoring yourself when you're coming up with ideas, then you're not like, I don't know, it's like you're not fully open as a writer or artist. So I just kind of tried not to think about like appropriateness, but I just let the story happen naturally. There's some parts where the humor is kind of intense, and there's some parts that I don't know. I figured because it was for middle schoolers that they could handle stuff. So I don't have any horribly inappropriate jokes, but I think just by merit of it being about a kid makes it like thematically in a way relevant to the kids who are reading it, versus Henchgirl being about someone in her 20s. It's like when little kids read that, they're like, this is grown-up stuff. I'm not interested in this. Where's like the skateboards?
The experience of being someone who's 20 and like really struggling for work and dealing with being exploited basically in all the aspects of your life is such a universal thing for young folks now that I almost I'd want like a teenager. I would like deliberately be like, teenager, read this so you'll know the way of the future and prepare yourself to combat it.
Well, there's a part where she's like, don't go to the expensive school. Be careful because there's like student debt. So that's my little shout out to people who are about to become, 20-something wage slaves.
Yeah. The idea that the media perpetuates, especially the pundit class, of like what constitutes like working class people is completely untrue. Working class America is people with shitty office jobs, which is like that's jobs where they make you wear a suit to work but don't pay you what a person who's forced to wear a suit to work should be paid, right? And
yeah,
I think that you're sort of channeling that and don't get any of the respect or independence. They say like, oh, you're a manager, so that's why you don't get overtime, but you're not really a manager. You're actually just breaking labor law. And I felt like
so they get you.
Yeah, exactly. They've written an avatar of a character who really represents those things. I really do want to just sort of show up and help her organize the workforce. Like that's That's, they obviously, Monsieur Butterfly is entirely irrelevant. Like, the various henchmen should just seize the means of production because he's completely useless and run it as a villainy cooperative. I mean, that's really the dream.
They got to
Especially now that
unionize.
there's Obamacare, she can exactly. And now that there's Obamacare, she could continue to be an independent. She can continue to work for a small business, and she would be able to have health care. So
that's
we're
true.
able
But
to
is there
save it
Obamacare
tomorrow.
in Crepe City? I guess there would be.
It's America, right? Like, I didn't feel like Canada. I mean, if it was Canada, none of these problems would be. It's like that old joke. God, who did the comic strip where it was like, if Breaking Bad was in Canada, and it was he gets health care, so that's the end of that. There's no drama.
Oh my God, that's hilarious!
Boers.
I never saw it.
I think it might be Matt Boers who did it, but I just give him credit for lots of things. Actually, that's a question.
It's definitely America. But
yeah. Where was I going with this? Oh, yeah. So who are some of the other cartoonists whose work has influenced yours at this point?
Well, the biggest... Okay, there's a couple, and this is great because I'm home so I can look at my shelf. But the biggest influence on me, I think, in terms of my sense of humor is probably Rumiko Takahashi. I really loved her stuff when I was little, and I still do, but it was big for me back then, and I always liked how hilarious everyone's expressions were, and I think a lot of my comedy stems from people making funny faces, so I think I kind of got that from her. And there's also, Sailor Moon was a big one when I was younger too, but continuing on to this day because I'm rewatching it right now. And I really love Brian Lee O'Malley, and that's pretty obvious when you look at my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone says Scott Pilgrim, which I am flattered by because I love his art. I love Kate Beaton. I think her stuff is really funny and interesting too. And it's cool because it looks kind of sloppy, but when you look at it as an artist, there's really, really she's very talented at drawing and expressing things. A lot of different people. I love Jake Wyatt. Do you know his stuff?
I don't know who that is.
He's got he did some random Marvel issues and stuff. He just has a really cute style that's a mix of kind of indie sort of manga, retro manga. I don't know. His stuff is really cool. I always look at his Tumblr for inspiration.
I'll have to check that out. But I really feel like the superhero spoof. Well, I really did think it had been mined dry. I was convinced of this, which is why I didn't pick up Henchgirl sooner. But Brett was like, no, you should read it. This is excellent. And you've managed to tell jokes I haven't fucking read already. And I read so much superhero media. It's kind of amazing.
That's cool. I mean, I what was it that was different? What would you say?
I think that ultimately the superhero environment in your comic is a setting in which these characters actually have this very real and relatable interpersonal drama. And so it's more you were writing in a heightened reality where things that are absurd are more explicitly clear because they're stated that way. But in the context everybody lives is more elevated and vibrant because there's superhero / villain battles happening in the background. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't read a comic that was just about Mr. Good Guy. That's not interesting at all. Definitely having the inversion of which characters eye view you get on the story was very fresh. But but also just the human story that is a far more realistic story about young adults and what they face today than others, I think was very important to it working for me.
Yeah. It was funny. A lot of, I had it as a webcomic at first. A lot of my readers and people who left comments would be like, I want to know more about Mr. Great Guy. What's he going to do? Oh, my gosh, This is a great character. Let's learn more about him. And I was like, no, guys, the joke is that we don't care about him. He would be the main character, but he's like a tertiary character, and that's like the joke of his character. So, but people are entitled to their opinions and all that. But I thought that was funny because it was like the point was that he's not the main character for once.
Yeah.
And that maybe a rich, angsty guy isn't necessarily the most interesting character after all.
And he's so fucking irresponsible and just stuck in his own pain. Like, the very dramatic sequence that happens with him and Lana, and I won't say what it is, was like just sort of shocking in all the right ways. Like, I didn't think you could like shock me in that context, but that shocked me. And yeah,
I know. That's like one of the few reasons why I have hesitation telling kids to read Henchgirl, because I'm like, oh, except for like a couple parts. But well, I wanted to play with that's obviously a very, very common trope in comics. I guess I don't think it's that much of a spoiler. Like fridging a character's girlfriend to make them more interesting. So I wanted to do the opposite, where the actuality of fridging someone's like a significant other is like it shouldn't be a like narrative tool. So it was kind of, I don't know, that was my weird, I was trying to make a statement about fridging girlfriends and also about totally, like the damsel stuff.
I mean,
what were you saying?
He's intolerable and boring, like, and that in itself is funny before she dies, and then after she dies, it's like an even more hyperbolic version of it, which I just think was so freaking hilarious. Yeah,
I think that's just like my sense of humor is to find. I don't even know.
When you were creating the series, were you purposely trying to, like, for that moment, were you sitting there and being like, okay, I want to make a statement on this, or was it more like a natural of, this has come up, what can I do different with it? Like, what was, like, taking tropes and twisting them and having fun with it, like, was that part of your bigger picture and concept of the whole series?
Well, actually, that particular issue, well, this is a real testament to how long it took me to make Henchgirl, but I came up with the concept for that issue while being, like, extremely bored in the last, like, 20 minutes of Man of Steel. And I was like, there was one part where just, like, a clearly foam piece of building, like, someone just pulls a piece of building off of them in the part in the end where Metropolis is getting destroyed. And I was just like, oh, my God, seriously? Like, nobody is getting hurt during, like, these, like, there's no, like, repercussions for all this destruction, which a lot of people have said about that movie. But when I was watching it, I was just really bored, and so I was just trying to think of my own alien invasion story to pass the time, and that was kind of where that part came from in a weird way.
So the movie did have a positive thing, like, result is what I'm hearing.
It made me think, but it made me think critically. But yeah, no.
Something good came out of
that. But also,
it
was just like, it's just like Lois Lane's character was constantly in danger, and she was constantly just being whisked away by Superman as well. I was just like, I don't like that. See, if I have a male character whisk a female character to safety, as happens in like the first 3 pages of Henchgirl, then a couple more pages in, she has to save him back so that it's feminist.
I love that. And her just being proud that she's like, I guess I'm like, and that's she's proud that she's strong, but she's like human strong, you know. It's like not even superpower. She's a woman and she's strong. Like that's that, you know.
Yeah.
I thought that was that. I think that's a particularly fun character note. Oh God, you know, you have this moment where you have the sister character introduced, and you get this little close up of her gritting her teeth, and that just these little small gestures that are just simultaneously funny and painful are, I think, like to me that's like what that is one of the big trademarks I think for the story.
Yeah. Oh, you know what's interesting actually about that gritting the teeth part? I mean, like I said, I did Henchgirl for such a long period of time that I was influenced by so many different things that I was reading and watching. You know, as I was going through it, you know, I would read a new thing and I would be like, that's a cool idea. And I just read Black Hole when I was working on that, the Charles Burns book. Mm-hmm. And so I think I was trying to do a Charles Burns-y thing with that picture of, like, the realistic zoom in on her, like, forced smile. So it's kind of interesting. That totally was me trying my hand at Charles Burns style.
Yeah, I haven't read that book, but it would definitely work as a stylistic touch to call attention to that moment. Or, you know, like, yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry. I'm just, like, I'm having a hard time, like, not knowing that there might not be future Henchgirl.
Well, I guess it's like the last part is supposed to be an epilogue, so think of it that way. That's like a where are they now?
I see.
But what were you saying?
Have you seen anybody do cosplay as your characters?
Yeah, I had one cosplayer so far, and she had a really intense cosplay. It was impressive. She cosplayed as Mannequin, but like in his street clothes. But she made a timekeeper, so she took a pocket watch and like glued rhinestones on it in the way that there are rhinestones on it in my comic. It like looked better than my own design, and I was just like, this is amazing. And she made a Cthulhu burger cup.
Oh, wow.
It was so cool. It was really awesome. I was amazed.
What convention did you see that at?
She actually came to a store signing I did.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was in Staten Island.
As a creator, like, what do you...
You're a New Yorker. I forgot.
As a creator, like, what do you think when you see something like that? Was that something you, like, ever imagined you'd experience?
Well, it's funny because there's that, and then there's, like, I was going to say, like, Rule 34 stuff, which is, like, someone did one of those, and I was like, I made it. Ew. But I made it. No, I mean,
Rule 34, isn't that just gender flip?
Oh,
no,
I think that is just that if it exists, there's porn of it on the internet.
Yeah,
right?
the Rule 34 is yeah.
If it exists, there's porn of it. Okay, got it.
So once you're like a foot fetish picture. I know. I was like, that's nice. They're invested enough in this character. But no, having a cosplayer was really cool, and it was very surreal.
I have to ask which is more surreal, the Rule 34 or the cosplayer, because I don't know which I would be more like, okay, that's cool that it's gotten that far.
Well, the cosplayer was definitely better because there's no reservations there. It was just a very awesome thing that made me feel famous. But I mean, I appreciate any form that fandom takes, I guess.
It's a very positive attitude to take and a good way to look at it.
I can't believe I've been wrong about which rule was which all this time. I'm a little bit embarrassed.
It's cool. It's cool. There are so many internet rules.
Is Rule 43 the rule that there's a parallel universe where people are different genders? Or am I confusing that with the Avengers parallel universe where everyone has beards? I don't remember.
That's the mirror universe.
I don't know that
universe. There is a rule 40. Is a rule 43 that you can find anything on the internet if you're willing to look for it long enough. Apparently, that's rule 43. So how did the series actually come to be print and go from to the various publishers?
I started it out, like I said, webcomic and self-publishing, and I would do comic conventions, and actually my first year of doing comics, what happened was I randomly found someone who had an extra spot in Artist Alley at New York Comic Con, and they were like, hey, who wants to share my table? And because I could never get in at that point because I was just like self-published webcomic person. And so I got in New York Comic Con that year, and it turned into a couple different job opportunities, including the VIP book. So I was able to quit my day job.
Yay!
And yeah, that was really, well, it was funny because I have a New Year's resolution 2014 sheet on my wall next to my desk, and one of the things on it is quit my job, and my last day at my job was like December 31st of that year, so I really got it in right under the wire. But so then I was freelancing. I'd met Scout, and they were interested in picking up Henchgirl for single issues, so I signed up with them, and then I also met Dark Horse, and it just so happened that I was able to sign over my trade rights to them, which was really cool because they just have really good distribution setup and everything, and they have they're a big company, a lot of publicity, and they take really good care of you. So I did the single issues through Scout Comics, and then the trade through Dark Horse.
Interesting. I was wondering how the two split out, because you don't see that too often in comics. Every once in a while, but not too often.
It was kind of, honestly, it was a bit of contract finagling on my part, but it was one of those things where I was like, Dark Horse is definitely will be a better step for my career, and seeing as I don't have a day job, I take the career part very, very seriously, because living in New York, I got that New York rent.
Yeah.
It's weird to say, but it actually feels really nice to hear someone who's really taken their contract seriously and thought these things through, because you don't hear that too often from folks.
Yeah. Well, I try to make measured decisions, and I don't know. I'm definitely not a risk taker, so I usually just try to go with whatever's the safest bet. That's how I live my life. But I would be a boring character personally to have a comic be about, because it would be someone making very logical, safe decisions.
I guess you're able to get that out in the series. But Mary is a very believable sort of a risk taker, because her risks really come from a place of desperation and trying to, and taking. She's coming from a very relatable place.
Yeah, I think she's, in a way, she's like me, but I almost feel like she might be like my id or something. The things you don't dare to do in your real life because you're like, that might not work out. That's kind of where, as a writer, where you can play with alternate paths, etc. But yeah, I based a lot of her off of me, so I tried to make her I don't know, a real person.
Absolutely.
With the series, did it complete as a webcomic before it hit print, or were you still doing it as a webcomic before, like, after it was the first issue started printing?
Oh yeah, it wasn't finished. In fact, the last 2 issues or so, I was actually like racing against the clock to finish the comic in time for the paperback release. It was, yeah, I kind of, I mean, yeah, I think like I had like I was just kind of working on later issues simultaneously as each issue was getting published, but I can't actually work at that fast, like 25 pages a month or whatever rate. So I guess I can, but I was doing a bunch of other stuff. So I was kind of catching up. So it was sort of simultaneous with at least the last issue. The issue came out before the webcomic pages came out.
Well,
and there aren't a ton of people who are really doing who aren't really doing like all of the above for themselves as a one-stop shop. I mean, that's most labor-intensive way to work. Like, are you looking to do any work with other partners moving forward, or?
I have a pitch in the works with Rafer Roberts, who writes Archer and Armstrong and some other stuff for Valiant. He's really cool. And we have kind of this, it's like a modern fantasy comic, and so it's kind of like Broad City or something, except there's magic in the world. It's kind of like a D&D New York. So, like, I don't know, like we were drinking beer that was like +1 inebriation or something, and I just, you know, it's that kind of comic, and I think it would be like a heist caper. So that's something that's in the works as well. But generally, I think I'm just like a controlling person. I like doing it all myself because a huge part of writing is drawing, because you decide the tone of how the things are said, and like, it's like you decide the acting when you're drawing, and that's a big part of the writing. So, because it's almost like the writer comes up with the dialogue, but if it were a book, the artist would come up with like the descriptions and the nuances. So I like doing all of that stuff. And also, I was an English major, and I am like an accredited copy editor. So I really like doing the lettering, because I hate typos and grammatical mistakes very much.
So
I think you had a couple jokes about that too, even.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
What jokes were there about that?
Oh. There were a number of people's grammar that got corrected.
Oh, yeah, that's just me.
I know now.
So the question I had about the webcomic versus the print was, like, did you find yourself shifting how you were telling the story at all because you were dealing with print at that time? Like, is there a difference between creating as a webcomic versus a print series?
Well, I mean, there's a huge difference. Like, the comic I'm working on now is just for print, so I'm pacing it totally differently, because I always had this kind of philosophy with webcomics, which is each page, in a way, it's an update, so it kind of needs its own mini narrative. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, it needs to get something across that makes it worth waiting a week or whatever. So I condensed a lot of stuff into there. And also, because my commenters would be like, oh, but what about this plot thing? And what about that? And they would speculate. And actually, I found their commentary very interesting and, like, helpful for coming up with what should happen next, because it was a good way to gauge what people were, like, really responding to and what they thought was interesting. But at the same time, it's kind of a trap, because you don't want to just constantly be shifting what you're doing based on what, like, some random person, like, typed in, like, 30 seconds on the sly at work or whatever. But I didn't change the way I did the last issue or anything because I wanted everything to be consistent. So every page of Henchgirl is jam-packed with information. Oh my God, my dog is like sleeping next to me and she's barking. It's so cute.
Aw, is she sleep barking?
Yeah, we can hear this.
That's adorable.
Oh,
I like
that. I woke her up.
The pets in your story are really great. Like all the little pet companions that show up in their various.
One of them is
forms.
my dog Penny, the white dog with the brown spot on its head. That's my dog, and I drew her everywhere because she's cute. And I put my sister's dog in there too, and she's like really happy because she's like, now Maggie's famous.
Aw, definitely. Yeah, I think that the animals are often used in comics like to heighten the stakes on things, but you also really use yours for humor very well. And with the anime jokes, it was pretty amazing too.
Yeah, I guess they usually do put like a dog in there so that later on someone bad can threaten the dog. I just would never. I wouldn't do that because I love puppies. I just thought it would be funny. I was trying to think of funny things for her to do when she like goes bad, and I was like, because I wanted them to be consistent with the character she already had. So it was like, of course she would steal puppies because like puppies are great, and like she likes puppies, so that's like the thing that evil Mary would do is like steal a bunch of puppies.
I thought that was such an interesting twist to go towards, like what happens when you lose your agency and are really made to be evil. I did not see that coming, and I thought that was really smart and interesting. And
thank you.
It continued, like, and you had real repercussions and asked, like, I think that Cocoon had the same thing happen to her.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I heavily implied that. And I, in a way, I think where I was coming from was when I was coming up with that concept, I was pretty miserable at my old job. Like, it was nothing that anyone was doing to me. I just was feeling stagnant. I felt like it was making me very, like, bitter and angry as a person. So that, to me, is, like, a metaphor for when the thing you're doing is making you so miserable that it, like, takes over and makes you into a different person. So, in a way, it was, like, that's what it kind of stood for me, or at least why I justified doing that when I was writing that part. But also just because it's one of my favorite tropes is when people go bad, because it's them, like, doing the things they always wanted to, usually. So I thought that would be, it's just a fun way to show what the person truly wants also. I don't know.
I mean, you had fun with the tropes. Did you ever think about doing, like, there's always that mirror universe joke of the evil person has the goatee. Did you kind of think about playing with that at all with it? Because I totally expected to be like, all right, just going to show up evil with a goatee because mirror universe.
Yeah, the darkest timeline from Community.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, you know what? I missed an opportunity there. You know, if I ever make book 2, someone will have an evil goatee. Maybe Mary. Who knows?
I really need you to make, I know, like, I want to encourage people to go and read the book right now as it is, but I just have to say as a fan, I'm really encouraging you to make book 2 in part because I don't think I can live without knowing whether or not Mannequin is going to, his fate. I actually cried. I'm going to just tell you that at the very end of the book.
Really? Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That makes me so happy. I mean, in a way. Oh wow. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. It wasn't one of those, like, I feel emotionally exploited by this story, like, kinds of things. I don't like when fiction does that. I could definitely, it was, you weren't like trying to elicit an emotional response just to show that you could, in fact, do that. I just think it was something that was like earned because of the stakes with the different characters. And
yeah, I mean, I in fact am surprised that made you cry because it wasn't my intention there. I truly wasn't manipulating anyone because I was unaware. But I don't know. I think I was really interested in kind of where his powers would take him and all that, and like kind of what it meant for him. And also, I guess it just gave their whole relationship kind of like it's like a very difficult like block to overcome in a way, because I won't.
I mean at the very end. I don't mean like, I think it's really hard to like talk about this without trying to give away huge plot points. But no, I mean at the very end of the story, not when the very bad thing happens earlier. I thought that was like really remarkable and a really beautiful metaphor. Yeah. No, I just need to know.
Oh, you mean right at the very end?
Yeah, right at the very end.
I got it. I got you. Well, I mean, that actually means a lot to me because I think any author would be very happy to hear that, like, their stuff is, especially when it's a comedy, because my comic is mainly a comedy.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Oh, thank you.
I know. I was surprised. So that's why I'm just like, yeah, I need to know. But
I was actually thinking, like, one of my ideas for like a thing to do in the future maybe be like even just a one-issue thing. It'd be interesting to see things from Mannequin's perspective, especially now that he has such a crazy perspective. So I was thinking that'd be a fun. I don't know, because I also think. I mean, this isn't really a spoiler because it's more speculation, but in a way, he's kind of immortal now.
Yeah, exactly.
So I thought that was like, I don't know, I didn't mean to have more ideas about the plot, but like that gave me some interesting ideas.
Yeah, the question of like when your consciousness is untethered in the world, like what does that leave you with, and like how are you? What kind of existence
can you possibly have?
I mean,
how can you be like connected with the world? Yeah.
Have you thought about where everyone might be in a second volume? Like what you might do?
No, I don't have any ideas yet for volume 2. That's why I haven't written it or anything. But that's the hard part. Coming up with what happens. But I left it off on a note where Mary is seeking redemption and the other characters have kind of banded together. So I think that's a good idea of like what they are doing after the comic is over.
Mhm.
Although
the world definitely has taken
I've taken the note that clearly people want more Henchgirl.
Yes.
We're about to start rallying people, so forgive us.
Just do a change.org petition.
Actually, Brett and I would probably use a different sorry, just kidding. We're like literally the people who host the comics podcast that would actually be able to give you an answer about which petition platform to use for this. Because that's kind of what he and I do for a living. So
that's what we do.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think I would probably. I might do the petition on like a standalone, or maybe I would just do it on Thunderclap, and everybody would just end up giving you a lot of tweets about how you should make another edition. That's what would result with people signing it by tweeting.
Oh,
well, thank you.
Wouldn't that be that you go, you do the petition,
go and tell you what to do.
You'd sign the petition, and then you'd go afterwards. You'd then say, "Hey, now that you've signed the petition, you should go tweet this. You should go tell your friend. You should forward this email, and yeah, it would be an all of the above on whatever platform we choose to run it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
This
has been on our list for a while.
Oh my gosh! No, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad that you guys do the Henchgirl so deeply too. I mean, you know, it's cool to talk about like the nitty gritty of the comic too.
Excellent. So, where can folks follow your work on the internet?
Well, the best place to go is my Twitter account, which is henchgirl_comic, and I generally post everything on there. I'm also on Instagram as henchgirl_comic. I'm on Tumblr as kghoul, and also I have a mailing list. I can't say the URL because it's just a Google Doc, but if people want, they can find that on the internet and sign up and find out all the updates about me, because sometimes I send out newsletters.
Excellent. Well, we can show you how to do an internet short link so that the URL is more easily remembered.
Oh, yeah, I know how to do that. I just didn't do it yet. So.
Well, you're already steps ahead by having an email list. Many don't.
Really
So
yeah.
Step one is done. Step one's done and far ahead of so many. Well, thanks so much for coming out. We really, really appreciate it, and we'll definitely. I'm actually really excited to see what you do with graphics and the next, the graphic novel that you put out.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's gonna be cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We hope to have you on again to talk about future work.
We'll have to have you back to discuss that.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
Of course. I'd love to.
All right.
Have a great night.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.
Yep, bye.
So, Brett, you and I are back on Wednesday next week. We're having 2 Wednesdays in a row of podcasts.
Yes, we are.
And that's because next Wednesday we're talking about Guardians.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which I have already seen, and I'm going to see it again with my wife tomorrow. So I got my press sneak peek yesterday. So I'm already processing everything in my head. I will. I'll tell you the tricks. I think I've sent the tricks around. I'll send you the tricks if I haven't sent you directly the tricks. But yeah, this is seriously taking me like 9 years to pull this off. This is seriously 9 years of me trying to pull this off. So this is like I've. It's not easy. It's really not easy. So, but now that I'm in, we're good. But yeah, already seen it. It's fun. We'll just go with that, and I'm not going to taint anyone's opinions, and I'm very fascinated to hear your opinion. With you being a Kirby fan,
we'll be joined by a guest who I've wanted to have on for a while. Filmmaker David Brandon Wilson will be joining us as well. So join us next week.
It's going to be really fun. Yeah, it's going to be a great episode, and 9:30 or 10 o'clock. I don't remember the 10 p.m. Okay, cool.
Maybe it's 9:30. We'll check. It'll be a Wednesday. Yes,
it's definitely going to be Wednesday. That's a definite. So we'll have that on Blog Talk Radio probably this weekend to get that all set up. So just double check on the time, and that's about it. As far as other things, if you enjoyed this, if you're into comics, if you want to check out more about Henchgirl or Dark Horse or pretty much anything comics related, just check us out at graphicpolicy.com. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Facebook, Tumblr, YouTube. We're all there. It's all at Graphic Policy, keeping it really consistent. And what about you, Elana? Where can folks follow you?
On Twitter.
Especially for tomorrow with May the 4th.
Oh, yes. On Twitter all the time. Elana_Brooklyn. That's where I'm at all the time. And I Graphic Policy when I'm being good and getting my writing done.
Truth. But we get to have fun doing this, and we get to talk to really cool people and discuss things and have fun conversations like this and in like depth, like really interesting conversations like last week's about Secret Empire. So, and then next week we get to discuss movies. All good times. So if you enjoyed that, you should go and check out this podcast either on iTunes, Stitcher, or on SoundCloud, or Graphic Policy. It's all there. Go listen to back episodes. If you came in late, go listen to this episode. If you've already listened to this episode, share it with friends. Give it likes, like thumbs up, ratings of 5, whatever is out there. Go show your support, subscribe, stuff like that. Much appreciated. The more support you show, the better we do, and more other people will find it. So please go do that. So as always, thank you so much for listening. Really appreciate it. Until next time, I'm Brett.
I'm Elana.
Keep it geeky.
Hey, thanks for watching the previous video from Graphic Policy Television. Just by watching, you help support our site. Thank you so much. Now, if you're watching these videos, you probably care about geeky things like movies, television, comic books, toys, games, video games, you name it. You can go and subscribe right now to our YouTube channel to stay in touch and catch all the new videos, or check out our website at graphicpolicy.com. There's a nice link on this end of the video. But as always, thank you for watching. Keep on rocking and keep it geeky.